Hey, it's Joe Glines, and I got an email from a friend of mine the other day. He was working on some stuff in PowerPoint, and he couldn't figure. He was pulling his hair out because he got it to sort of work and then not work on other things. And so this code here, this isn't actually what he sent me, but it's pretty close to it. And what it was set to do is you highlight some text in PowerPoint, and actually, I'm not sure if this is running yet. So let me launch it, highlight it, run it, and it should color the selected text, right? And this is an RGB. This is where my vocabulary breaks down a little, because it's the, this is the red, green, blue values from 0 to 255 for each of those. And what was interesting was he got this to work, but then he had a specific color for his business that's their standardized color. When he would change the numbers, like let's change this to a 1 and a 1, and let's highlight, save it, reload it, and run and do something else. And it was keeping it, this should not be the same color, right? Let's make this although if you change the first one, let's make this one 255. I believe this is supposed to be like a lime green. And these should be 0, right, in reality. You come with 0, save it, reload it, and now I'm going to highlight it and run it. And notice it changes to black. And so he was very perplexed, and I don't blame him. So he asked if I had any thoughts. I Googled just like he probably did. I didn't spend too much time on it because I Googled, hey, is it this way? And I think both this color and this, I think both of these worked. I'm going to leave this in here for now. And but my point in this video was, honestly, I didn't spend that much time trying this, because once I realized this looked like the right code and it wasn't working, I said, hey, let me stop and think about what are we doing and how will we go about doing it. Another interesting thing in PowerPoint was there's no record macro inside PowerPoint, which is really weird to me. You can play macros and edit macros and you can write them, but you can't hit record and then do something and then watch it. He actually went over into Word, recorded the macro and brought it over. But, so what I did was I said, well, let me see, like, let's say it was this blue was the color that he wanted, right? So what I said was, like, you know what, let me do this. I'm gonna borrow this. I'm gonna comment that out for now and do a message box. And I'm gonna get rid of this here at the end. So basically I'm gonna display that value of selected text, right? So save it, reload, run. And I got this number back, which is not like an RGB number. It's not a hex number. It turns out after some researching and talking to Maestriath, it's a hexadecimal number. Sorry. No, it's not hexadecimal. It's a decimal number, which sounds really weird, but it's just truly is just a number that, and that's what the video I did the other day where Maestriath was showing me how to calculate and stuff. So check that video out if you want, if you're curious more about the decimal and hexadecimal stuff. And he has one also, he taught me on binary and how it's calculated. So that's what I ended up doing. It was like, oh, you know what? All we need to do is to grab some of the font as the color you want, and then maybe I can take this value. Let me copy that, paste it. I should have just stored it in the clipboard from the script, right? But whatever. So I'm gonna cut it here, come back up to here, and now I'm gonna say RGB : equals, and put that, and now I'm gonna save this. Now let's pretend that blue is the one I wanted. Theoretically, oops, I left the message box, which is fine, but notice it changed it to blue, right? And so this is how I went about. I asked him for an example of his actual font color, and then I used this to get it and see it, and then I didn't know at the time. I didn't know what this number was, and honestly, I didn't care. I'm like, look, we solved it, right? We got your number, and then now you can just go set it, and it took care of the problem. But the point I wanted to bring up is trying to think outside the box of troubleshooting of like, well, what can I do with what I have? I have some code here that's working. How do I adapt it? And one other thing I'll point out while I'm here, I was talking to Maestriath about it. This code, let's put it back to where the 255 was here, right? And I mentioned that when I would run it, let's make this actually 100. That it would change the colors, and sometimes it would change it to like a dark brown, kind of reddish brown. And when Maestriath looks, he's like, man, I'm really surprised that works. And what we realized was how it's being interpreted is in reality, this is the same thing as this, right? It's looking, it gets to this first comma, and then it stops, and it's setting the value. So if I both put this back to 255, which is what the first one was, save, reload, it's going to make that bright red, right? So that's what that was doing. That's what the problem with my friend. It worked, and he thought it was working, but it truly wasn't really using all three colors. It was just using the first one off of the decimal system. And so anyway, so that was, long story short, is more about how to troubleshoot and how to work through, hey, something's working, but let's see what we can do and get more information about it, and then, you know, see if that can help us in any way. So just thought that'd be helpful to do. And there is another way, by the way, in other Microsoft programs like Excel and Outlook and Word, there's a color index number. So you can set hexadecimals, you can set decimals. The RGB thing that I'm used to seeing in other code, that's why I thought this would work. Matrix pointed out to me that, it's usually like this, and that's because in the programming languages, they have a function that is an RGB function, and it takes this value and will convert it to either like a decimal or a hexadecimal or whatever it needs, right? So that's why I thought the initial thing was working, but when I write around this AutoHotkey, it says, hey, there is no RGB function, so that's not, it won't run. So that will be in the native languages of the other program. So anyway, hope that helps. Cheers.